All right. So with that, we can look at remote repositories. Remote repositories are Git repositories that are just hosted somewhere else other than your computer. So this is often a platform like GitHub or GitLab. And you can interact with these using a variety of commands. Git clone will copy a repository to your own computer. Git remote will allow you to configure sort of the URL of this remote. So by default, you'll get like a remote named origin, and it will have a URL that's where you got the repository from if you run a git clone. You can use git fetch to pull changes from a remote repository, You can use git pull, which will run basically a git fetch and then try and merge the changes into your local repository. And you can use git push to upload changes from your local repository to a remote repository. Now there's sort of a lot to unpack here, and for the sake of time, I didn't have a hands-on example for a remote repository, partially because some of this will require some configuration on your part. So on GitHub, you'll have to set up keys, which will allow you to sort of push or pull changes from your repositories without needing to use your password. It doesn't support password authentication. So this is an extra step that I just didn't really want to get into in this presentation, so I just skipped over this entirely, but we can show some examples here. So let's just say I go to GitHub and look at, let's say, some random trending repository. It doesn't really matter which one. Let's just pick something here, pick something from Microsoft. So I could go, let's say, one directory up and say git clone this URL from GitHub, and this will set up a new repository. So I could then change directories to this new rd-agent directory. Again, I have no real idea what this project is, but it works for the sake of an example here. And now we could run all of the same commands that we've been running in the past. So we could look at git log for this. We can see this project's history. And then, of course, we could work on top of this project. So I could just go in and look at some random file. I can look at that README. So they have some HTML here, some Markdown. We could really just add anything we want here. And then we'd interact with this repository just like we've been interacting with all of the others. So I could add this and then make a commit. And so I've just edited the history of this new project that I've just downloaded. Now, of course, I couldn't actually just upload this to GitHub. It would be kind of chaos if any random person on the internet could write to any repository on a website like GitHub. So they have security practices in place here, of course. And we'll get into this a bit more as we talk about forks and pull requests. Now that's sort of the gist of how you'd work with the repository, right? I cloned the repository, so now I have a local copy. I could update it with git fetch and git pull, one of the two. And then I could send my version of the repository back to the remote host with git push. So there's more information about this on the handout. Now, remote repository hosts often add features that are not a part of Git itself. This includes issues, which allow users to ask questions or report problems. So we can go back to this GitHub page, and sure enough, there's an issues tab. So you can see there's some people asking questions, asking for features. So the developers here can comment on this further and resolve this if they feel that they've made changes or that they're not relevant, things like that. So it's just a place for discussion of the project. Remote repositories also have pull requests, which allow users to suggest changes. So as I mentioned, I couldn't just push my changes to this random Microsoft repository that I found for security reasons, of course. But I could make a copy of it, which is what's called a fork. And so then I have a local copy of this remote repository, or a copy of this remote repository associated with my account on the host, like GitHub or GitLab. And I could write to that, of course. And then I could submit what's called a pull request to the original repository, which is basically saying, here are some changes that I'd like you to merge. Please look into this and then merge them if you see fit, right? So we could look at some of these. Here's someone submitted what they say is a fix for something. This includes some commits. And people can review these pull requests, and then if everything's good to go, they can then just merge it into the original repository. So that's sort of the way that large projects handle working with a large number of people. Another feature is continuous integration and continuous delivery, which is where every time you send your changes to a remote repository, it goes and starts some server somewhere that will run a series of tests and try and build the software if applicable. So I think actually we saw something in this pull request. There were some checks. Here CI stands for continuous integration. So this is using some software to go run some tests on the new code that this person has written. And you can see this one actually looks like it failed, but it's not clear why. And then a relatively recent feature is machine learning driven security reviews. This has only really shown up in the past year or so, and on services like GitHub and GitLab, there are starting to be some built-in features that will scan through your repository looking for vulnerabilities. So this is likely still a paid feature. We can search for GitHub security review. So they advertise this as find and fix security issues as you code. So this is just an additional thing that's built into services like GitHub now that will help you maintain your projects. So here's another example of a pull request and an issue. Now, the Center for High Performance Computing has a GitLab instance at gitlab.chpc.utah.edu that you can use for your projects. It uses your University of Utah credentials to sign in, and you need to be on the university's network to use it. So if you're connecting from off campus, you'll have to use the campus VPN.